right, so one of the things I want you guys to notice here is I'll start to lift out of the throttle. So you'll notice that here, but I'm going to let the car coast for a split second. So as I drive into the beginning part of the carousel here, it's a lift, let the front end recover, keep letting it recover. Now my eyes are way out the left side here. You can't even see it on the screen. But what I'm trying to do is look far enough forward that in between the side mirror and the roll cage here, I'll have an idea of once this car rolls out into the center of this corner, when it's recovered enough that I can pick the throttle back up and get my hands open. And that's all to start on just a good lap here. So if you watch, drop the throttle, let the car roll, eyes forward, pick the throttle up, get your hands open as soon as possible. Now, coming through this last turn, I've experimented with eating all the curb, eating none of the curb, turning in later, turning in earlier. It doesn't seem to make a difference. So just whatever you're comfortable with. Once we get to the track in real life, we'll have an idea of how aggressive this curb is and whether or not you can grab it. But my guess is for the longevity of the car, we'll probably want to stay off of it. All right, so coming into the first turn, obviously we'll have all of these, whatever is over here, buildings, trees, structures, same with over here for reference points. Right now, what I've been using are these lighter marks in the pavement here. So you can see where there's some tire tracks. I've been using these ones here for whatever reason. They're in the same spot every single time, and I'm just basically looking right in front of them for these light patches. And you can see I'm already starting to come out of the throttle and onto the brake here. So now you'll see I'm full on the brake. I'm going to keep the car along the left side of this curbing for kind of as long as possible, because what ends up happening is if you get turned in early, the car is going to hit this part of the apex, and it's going to be pointed to shoot off the track in that direction. But the longer you let the car travel down the left side of the track here, when you turn in, the car is going to be much more pointed as you come through here. So you'll notice how late I turned in. That is so that the car is pointed when I go back to the throttle. It's really important how you trail out of the brake here, though, because while you're trailing out, you're trying to keep weight on the front without overslowing. I liked getting down to this curb and grabbing it a little bit, and I mean a little, not a ton, because as soon as you go over this crest, it really jostles the car. So you want to stay on this lower section here where the incline of the curbing isn't too bad. But I like to grab a little bit of that once the car is pointed in the right direction, then you can roll back into the throttle. So watch my inputs here, but the key here is trailing out of the brake enough that you're keeping weight on the nose, but you're not overslowing the car. Then you'll notice here, I have tracked out all the way. This basically opens up an entire extra car of width on the left-hand side. And again, we'll have to see whether or not this is usable in real life. But I want to be all the way over here. If I haven't gone this far over, then basically what I'm assuming is that I have made the width of the track an entire car width less. So you want to be set up all the way over here before you turn in going up the hill. And you'll see that that then translates to the exit here. You're going to use all of this on the exit. Now, you don't have to use this, and ideally during a race situation when you're not trying to get that last tenth, you'll probably want to be on the inside of it. If you get a really clean run up over the hill, you really don't need to drive all the way out here. But if you're trying to squeeze out a quality lap, which I was kind of trying to do in this one. You'll end up all the way over on this left-hand side. Now, Dan and I talked about that turn being wide open in real life. I don't know if it will be, but one of the things you'll notice is, for me, I had to lift out of the throttle in the middle of the corner here. And that's just to get a little weight on the front to make sure that I don't go flying off the left-hand side of the track, which I've done more than enough times. But the idea here is that when you get back to the curb and you eat all of this, again, we're essentially making the track wider so we can get closer to a straight line. But because I had carried enough speed over the hill, I had to lift. So this turn may or may not be flat, depending on your exit speed coming out of turn 2, as well as what the grip levels are like when we actually get there. And then coming into this corner, you'll see I'm starting to get on the brake. And then I went a little above halfway, but we'll call it a 6 out of 10 on the brake. And I'm going to drag that towards the apex until I know that I'm going to get there. As soon as I know I'm going to get to the apex, I go back to a maintenance throttle, and then I try and squeeze a little more on, but the car doesn't have enough torque to really have it make a difference. But the key here is getting back to throttle to settle the back of the car down. But you want to do it once the front end is pointed and you know that you're going to make it. If you do it too soon, that's what's going to cause you to track out and go wide. Okay, then coming into here, you'll notice I'm pretty far left, but the way that I came in, I almost came in at an angle, like I'm pushing the car right, and now I've got to get it to come back left again. So my eyes are way over here, and my goal is to try and get close to the grass on the inside. But this is all a really smooth brake, even though it's a heavy brake, so you can see about a 7 out of 10 here, maybe 8 out of 10. As you're coming into this section, this is a really aggressive brake to get the car slowed, but same thing, you don't want to overslow the car. So as soon as you can let it roll, let it roll. And so watch my inputs here. So it looks like I still have a little bit of brake on here, but that could also just be my foot resting on the brake pedal. So at this point on, assume that this is all rolling. And now I pick up the throttle. So let's watch that one more time in terms of brake application and then letting the car roll. It's really, really important. Now coming into here, what you'll have noticed is that I actually did my braking on the corner entry, and that's just keep weight on the nose. I'm really not trying to slow the car down. It just doesn't make any front end downforce. So getting the front end turned in here is really important. So you need some weight on the nose. I'll actually grab a downshift. I don't know if this is going to matter in the Supra, but it's just to get back in the meat of the power so that once the front end's down and I know that the car is pointed, I can go back to squeezing on the throttle to get a good exit out of here. So if you watch this, I will go to the brake on entry to drive it down to the apex, but I immediately go back to throttle to try and get a good drive out because I don't want to slow down too much. Because realistically, we're not grip limited here. It's just weight balance limited. All right, and then coming into here, Dan, this is what I was referencing when I said I have a reference point that I'm using, because we obviously don't have anything up here. We don't have any brake markers, but coming into this zone, you'll see this lighter strip of pavement right across here, this horizontal one. That's what I'm using as my reference point. So I'm basically assuming that once this disappears underneath my vision, that my front tires are at this mark. And that's when I'm going to the brake. And it's a hard, quick brake, get off the brake, let the car roll. And this is another curb that seems to help pull the car down. So again, my goal is to get down to this curb. Now, coming into here, you'll notice I'm pretty far inside. I don't think there's been a lot of variation, but what I do is if you look at the angle of the steering right here, I'm trying to get my hands close to open so that this is like braking in a straight line, or at least as close to it as I can. Because if you have a bunch of steering in it, you're going to have one of two things happen. You're either going to carry so much speed in that you're going to understeer off, or you're going to dump so much weight on the nose with a bunch of steering angle in it that the car is going to spin out when you get over here. So it's about getting your hands as open as you can, get the car slowed down, and then the rest of the turn is where you can concentrate on balancing the car. And this is a lot of keeping the weight on the front. Again, we're working on not overslowing the entry, but once the weight is on the front, we want to barely squeeze the throttle on, and that is what's going to keep our mid-corner momentum up. Then coming into here, you'll notice I had a little bit of brake. I'm guessing I probably just felt like I didn't have enough front grip. But this could be a lift, it could be a light brake, whatever you need to make sure that you've got enough weight on the front. But the goal here, don't cover a bunch of ground by tracking out to this outside area of the track. Cover less ground, stay on the inside. So it's wide open in between these two connections, or these two apexes. You'll roll out of the throttle, little light brake if you need to, get the front end down. As soon as you know that the front end is pointed, you can start to squeeze the throttle back on. I had a pretty good lap here, so I was able to get on the throttle early. But if you come in here and you can't get on the throttle at the same point, do not force it. Let the car roll. You are so much better off letting it roll than picking up the throttle too soon. So if you look right here, I have already started picking up the throttle relatively aggressively, 60, 70% throttle here. And then you'll watch me squeeze the rest of it on. This car just was handling really good for whatever reason. Well, I should say it was actually really loose, but that's why I was able to rotate it on throttle, which led to a good exit. I don't know if I got loose here or not, but probably. All right, and that's a lap. So that was an 18.6. Even when you totally pooch it, if you follow those same basics for repeating this lap, and super precise, this is inch perfect, right? Inch perfect in this brake zone where you're hitting the curb here, the tracking out in between turns 1 and 2, exit speed coming up to the top of 2. All this stuff is really, really important because this track is so short. So every little detail counts. And even if you totally pooch it, this ends up being like a mid-19 to a low 19. And that's like a, man, I totally threw this off lap. So when you really nail it, you can see about a mid-118 here. But ideally, if you guys can consistently run it in like a 120, low 120 to a high 119 by just using all these markers I just gave you, that's going to be awesome during the race. Now, I will put up a video where this shows the lap with the inputs here so that you guys can watch that, and then I'll take that away so that you can concentrate on what just the visual aspect of it looks like on track.